$20 million at one wedding in a country where teachers cannot afford bus fare to work. Something happened in Zimbabwe recently that has left ordinary citizens speechless, not because they are surprised, but because the scale of it, the shamelessness of it, the absolute unapologetic visibility of it was too much to ignore. And Nelson Chamisa just said what millions of Zimbabweans could not stop thinking. Zimbabwe, a nation where pensions have been eroded to almost nothing, where public hospitals run without basic medication, where schools are collapsing, where a mechanical engineer becomes a street vendor because the economy left him with nothing to fix. That Zimbabwe, that same Zimbabwe, just watched a wedding happen. A wedding so extravagant, so overflowing with cash and cars and cattle and luxury that it did not feel like a celebration. It felt like a confession. The wedding was between Taona Nyasha, John Taguyere, and Poneso Tinomuda Janda. The name Taguyere is not unfamiliar to Zimbabweans. Kudakwashe Taguyere, the father, is one of the most controversial businessmen in Zimbabwe. A tenderpreneur, a man whose business empire has grown in direct proportion to his proximity to political power, a name that has appeared on international sanctions lists, a name that ordinary Zimbabweans associate with the kind of wealth that does not grow from honest labor in a broken economy. And at his son's wedding, that wealth was on full display. Kudakwashe Taguyere and his wife Sandra gifted the newlyweds $2.5 million in cash, plus 33 hectares of prime land in Umwinsidale, valued at approximately $15 million. Let that calculation settle. $17.5 million from the parents alone. But the guests were not to be outdone. Wicknell Chivayo, the controversial tenderpreneur, whose name has become synonymous with government contracts and political connections, reportedly gifted $250,000 and a luxury designer handbag. Scott Sakupwanya, the gold dealer, contributed $500,000. Tino Machakere, Zimbabwe's youth minister, a government official paid by taxpayers, handed over a Defender Octa luxury vehicle valued at nearly $470,000. George Guvamatanga, a senior government official, and his wife reportedly donated 25 pregnant pedigree Beefmaster heifers alongside $250,000. And gospel musician Everton Mlalazi contributed $150,000. Add it all together, do the mathematics, $20 million flowing into one wedding in one day, among one circle of people connected by one common thread. Their proximity to power, in a country where the average citizen earns a fraction of what Machakere spent on a single wedding gift. A government minister gifting $500,000 worth of vehicle at a wedding to the son of a man whose business empire is built on government tenders in a country that cannot fund its own hospitals. If that does not make you feel something, check your pulse. Nelson Chamisa did not stay quiet. He released a statement that cut through the celebration like a knife through silk. He called the wedding guest list a roll call of the few who continue to plunder the nation's wealth and resources for their own benefit. He called the display of wealth obscene. And then he said the words that have been shared, quoted, and repeated across Zimbabwe ever since. Looted wealth stinks to high heaven. Looted, not earned, not built, not created through innovation or hard work or entrepreneurial risk. Looted, That word is a direct, deliberate, unambiguous accusation. Chamisa is not saying these people are merely wealthy. He is saying the wealth on display at that wedding did not come from Zimbabwe's formal economy. It came from Zimbabwe's people through state capture, through tenders, through the systematic redirection of national resources into private pockets connected to political power. And he placed this wedding inside the broader picture that is a truly damning, deteriorating healthcare, collapsing schools, starved salaries, eroded pensions, decayed infrastructure. These are not abstract policy failures. These are the daily lived reality of millions of Zimbabweans who watched a wedding happen that cost more than the annual budget of entire government departments responsible for their welfare. The contrast is not just inequality, it is moral collapse. It is the image of a system that has completely disconnected the people holding power from the people suffering under it. A system so comfortable in its excess that it does not even feel the need to hide, that celebrates publicly, that posts on social media, that invites cameras and guests and attention to a display that in a functioning democracy would demand immediate investigation. Zimbabwe has erupted over this story, not with surprise, with rage. The specific kind of rage that comes not from discovering something new, but from watching something you already knew finally become undeniable. Zimbabweans who have spent years being told that the country's economic challenges are due to sanctions, global factors, and complex international dynamics are looking at $20 million flowing into one wedding among one connected group of people. And they're asking a question that sanctions and global factors cannot answer. If there is no money for hospitals, where did the $500,000 Sakupwanya gifted at a wedding come from? If teachers cannot be paid a living wage, how does a youth minister afford to gift a luxury vehicle worth nearly $500,000? If pensioners are surviving on amounts that cannot cover basic food, what exactly does 33 hectares of prime Harare land gifted to a newlywed couple say about who this economy is actually working for? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the questions of a population that is doing the mathematics and arriving at conclusions that no government press release can neutralize. Chamisa's statement has given language to what ordinary Zimbabweans were feeling but struggling to articulate: looted wealth. 2 words: simple, devastating, and impossible to argue against when the evidence is sitting in $20 million of wedding gifts among people with direct government connections. Internationally, this story adds to a growing picture that Zimbabwe's governance challenges are not primarily about external pressure. They are about internal extraction, about a political economy that concentrates wealth among those closest to power while the rest of the country deteriorates. The wedding is over, the gifts have been given, the photographs have been taken, the luxury vehicles have been driven away, and Zimbabwe is left sitting with an image that will not fade quickly. $20 million, one wedding, one connected circle, one country where the hospitals are broken and the schools are collapsing and the pensions are dust. Chamisa called it looted wealth that stinks to high heaven. Pearson Mbalekwa was expelled from ZANU-PF for opposing the 2030 agenda. Chiwenga called certain people toxic and said Zimbabwe must never allow them to lead. A civic activist filed papers in the High Court to stop CAB3 without a referendum. And a government minister gifted a $500,000 car to the son of a controversial tenderpreneur while his ministry's programs remain underfunded. All of this in the same Zimbabwe, in the same week. under the same government. So here is the question that every Zimbabwean must carry into the week that CAB3 comes before Parliament for its open, public, recorded vote, when the people pushing to extend their time in power are the same people attending $20 million weddings while the country deteriorates around them. What exactly are they extending their time in power to do? And how much longer will Zimbabwe wait before it decides that looted wealth is not just a moral problem, but a political one that only the people themselves can finally solve, share this, talk about it? Because the wedding photographs will fade, but the question of who is eating Zimbabwe's wealth and who is finally going to stop them, that question is not going anywhere.